Morning everyone. I'll just give this a couple of minutes to boot up and then I'll explain the post that I've put up earlier regarding the eviction or the non-renewal of a lease due to a person being forced onto the cashless debit card. So, I'll just wait for a sec. Hang on, there's messages about to come in as well, so there's going to be a ding in a second. All right, I'll just give it a couple of minutes for a few more people to come in, and I'll just clear up some stuff here because I've noticed there's lots of comments that don't seem to understand the situation, so I'll just clarify it. So we've got a family in WA that were on a periodic lease, okay? So with the periodic lease, there is a set time that the landlord can give you notice without reason, right? They can just give you notice without reason if they want you to leave if you're on a periodic lease. Usually it's 30 days, right? It is in my state. In the situation we've got here, we've got a family that is being notified that their periodic lease is not being renewed due to the person being forced into cashless debit card. Now, the owner has been a victim of the into cashless debit card consequences of the previous tenant not being able to pay their rent in the past, causing the owner financial loss and causing all parties major stress. The owner is not obliged by law to accept Centrepay. The owner has to pay to set up Centrepay and has to pay ongoing fees every time they accept payment. Private owners are not obliged under law to accept Centrepay, and the bulk of them don't, right? So everybody's going, oh, this is illegal, that lease, it was not a fixed term lease. It was a periodic lease, okay? For instance, I'll give you an idea. The place I'm in started off as a 3-month lease and then transferred to a periodic lease, okay? I'm fortunate that where I live, I can pay my rent using Centrepay. So I'm pretty safe in that respect. But if I didn't have that ability to use Centrepay, then I would be in a lot of trouble if I was to be put onto the cashless debit card, because you can't pay a periodic lease without one hell of a bloody fight, and you've got to fight to get permission to get a housing limit. Then you've got to fight to get approval to transfer that money to your bank account so you can transfer it to the owner's bank account, which is where people fall behind in rent. And then, usually every 6 months they reset that housing limit to 0 without telling you. You don't find out until you go to pay your rent and it declines. But in a lot of cases, a lot of people are having that decline happen every fortnight, every month, 4 or 5 times in the 6 months. You know what I mean? So this owner is not doing anything wrong. And I'm very grateful that this owner put in writing the reasons why they are no longer renewing the lease. They've got no problem with the tenant. They've all got on really well. But he doesn't have to accept somebody on Indu and take the risk of being left out of pocket and have their mortgage stuffed around and the rent not paid. Okay, bear in mind that owners also have tenancy insurance to pay, maintenance and stuff like that. They can't afford for their money to be stuffed around either, just like anybody else. And Indu and Services Australia constantly put forced cashless debit card holders into a situation where they're actually causing them to break a legal binding agreement regarding their rent payments. By declining people the ability to pay rent, you put them in a situation where they're in a breach of their own tenancy agreements. This is not good enough, okay? So a lot of people are going, oh, that's not a legal valid reason for eviction. You don't need a reason for eviction anyway. There are no grounds evictions going on all over the country right at this moment for people who have been really good tenants. But if they're on a periodic lease, right, no grounds eviction. Sorry, I want the house back. Sorry, I want to renovate it. Bang, gone. You got 30 days. Bye. This person wrote out the reasons why, and he's quite within his rights to do that, It's just, I'm just trying to explain because there's so many people who have commented on the post saying that this is, it is wrong that this is happening. But the reason why I posted this, right, is it highlights the impact on not just the tenant and the family, but also the owners and their family. Okay, so this is the consequence of forcing people into onto a cashless debit card, where you have to pay rent their way on a fixed term signed lease. It's ridiculous what they've done. And this has been going on for 6 years. And a lot of owners have sat back and won't speak. And I've had a couple of people come to me and their owners have made it very clear. Look at Tempest in WA. She wanted to get signed onto her dad's lease because Indu wouldn't let her pay rent. Right? They made her homeless as a result because her dad couldn't keep up. There's only so much food, groceries and bills you can pay in lieu of rent before somebody says, no, I need your rent. I need the share of your rent. Right? And they made Tempest homeless while she was pregnant. She was couch surfing, bouncing between both parents' places, but she couldn't pay rent at either. Right? The owner of her dad's place, he wasn't rude, he wasn't nasty. He said, I have no trouble renting to people on Centrelink. I have no problems renting to Indigenous people because she's Indigenous, right? He said, but I do not accept people that are on the basics card or the cashless debit card because in the past, he can't guarantee his rents are paid on time or at all, and he doesn't want to deal with that. And he's fully within his rights to do that. After being made homeless, and then being rejected on opt-outs because you're at risk of homelessness, and Indu and Services Australia have made her homeless, they finally let her pay a small amount of money towards the rent. But then she can't draw her $200 every 28 days for herself because it's being, So Rihanna says here, you can't pay rent no matter what type of lease agreement you have. I have a 12-month lease agreement and I still struggle with Indu to pay my rent. I hate it, how it is no longer in my control. They have screwed me around so many times. Then when I get others to pay my rent, so I'm not too far behind, the nightmare of trying to get money back to those that helped me is horrific. It's a joke. And she also no longer lives in a trial area and has applied to get off of it. Do you know what I mean? What they do to people is horrendous. This is happening in all states, Jade. This is happening in Hinkler, in Queensland. This is happening in WA, in the Goldfields region. It's been happening in Ceduna. It's happening in Kununurra. It's happening across all the card trial sites. It's not just unique to one site. Okay, I've got a poll up on the no cashless debit card Hinkler region page at the moment. And, I put it up there a couple of weeks ago. We've got 2 people that have signed it that have been evicted and left homeless due to Indu not paying the rent, not allowing them to pay rent. I've had so many people have had to move out of properties because Indu will not allow them to pay the rent. Bottom line. Right? So, this just drives me nuts. And the department has kept on going, no, it's not true. No, it's not true. It's not happening. Right? Somebody else put in a Freedom of Information request recently asking how many people have been made homeless. The answer was 0 as far as the Services Australia is concerned. Excuse me. Right? And the result is we've got hundreds of people that have been moved on. It's like they're trying to gentrify all of the tourist regions that they've put the card into. They want people out. And there's a housing crisis. And owners and some real estates have made it very clear they won't take people on the Indu cashless debit card. Period. Right? I can understand when an owner says, look, I can't afford to keep copping default fees on my mortgage from my bank. That's not fair on the owner either. Nobody can begrudge the owner that. You know what I mean? Okay? Especially under the Tenancy Acts where it's quite clear, cash, direct deposit, as in you can go and put the money straight over the counter into their bank account, or you use your personal account to transfer the rent, right? Or check, even though check's not used that much, but they're the 3 options under tenancy law that owners are obliged to accept payments in. They're not obliged to accept payments in other form, you know what I mean? Especially groceries and bill paying. I mean, come off it. Even this week, a young person who is going to be in dire straits in Hinkler, right, because she's being forced onto this card, and they're putting her education and everything at all at risk, right, and her housing at risk. And the lady on the phone's answer was, oh, we'll just organise to do the shopping and pay the bills for the household. Hello? This is not, it's not acceptable. It's not good enough. Ironically, I woke up this morning and I had an interview with the Bundaberg radio station, 101.9 FM, I think it is. And they'll be using snippets of what I said tomorrow in their news broadcasts, right, about the housing crisis and Indication's debit card. It is a barrier to getting housing now. In all regions, owners have been bitten and it's cost them money. So now, most owners, it's like as soon as we can get this person out of our house, we're not putting another one in that's on the Indication's debit card, which is going to cause more trouble. Do you know what I mean? More problems. And it's just not fair on everybody concerned. But go easy, like the comments that I'm seeing on the post, you know, you've got periodic is you can have no cause evictions, you know what I mean? Simple as that. I mean, this owner isn't doing anything wrong. I've got certain people really smashing into the person. It's like, please don't, because both the owner and the tenant in this situation have had a really brilliant relationship, and it's not fair that we slam the owners that are being impacted too. In fact, we need to encourage them to write a letter like this and stand up and speak out and say, this is how the Indication's debit card is impacting my family, even though none of us are on it. So this is what we talk about with the ripple effect. With putting one person on the card, impacts the whole family, their immediate family, their extended family, but then it impacts the landlord's family, okay, or other businesses that people are dealing with, you know, when they can't pay childcare fees, when they can't pay loans and repayments and like that. It all has a ripple-on effect. And like we've said over and over again, the cashless debit card will impact your community, not just the person who's forced onto it. But they want to think it only impacts the person singular, with no thought of the impacts on the wider field, you know. And then you've got the emotional and human impacts on the family, on the children, on the stress levels. But that also applies to the owners of the private rentals that are being let out. You know, and we have a housing crisis at the moment. This is just, like I said to the guy on the radio this morning, 6 years this has been going on. 6 years. Since the day it started in Ceduna, people have had problems paying rents. People have been declined or denied the ability to pay rent. A lot of people cannot get a housing allowance at all, right? What a cruel thing to do to a disabled 18-year-old, moves to Brisbane to be closer to specialists. Signs her lease, she's okay, she's fine. She uploads her rent certificate to Centrelink and bang, gets a letter saying she's being put on the cashless debit card. She's in Brisbane. Yes, she moved from Bundaberg, but she's in Brisbane. But they wait till she got settled, signed her lease contract, right, goes to put up her rent certificate so she can get her rent assistance, and they're putting on the card. So she goes through all the rigmarole to sort all that out. Yes, you're approved for your rental allowance, blah, blah, blah. 20 minutes later, she gets a phone call. Oh, sorry, we can't approve your rental allowance. Leaving her family in Bundaberg to try and pay her rent as well as their own rent. Now, because of the situation with the housing crisis, right, the rest of the family, which has got 4 other siblings and the parents in Bundaberg, have now been given a notice to vacate, right, because the owner wants the house back because of the housing crisis. They're all at risk of homelessness. The parents are trying to pay the rent for the young girl in Brisbane who she can't get disability support pension. She's one of the 376,000 people with disabilities that should be on the pension that are on job seeker, right? So they're trying to keep her afloat because they're worried that if she gets evicted at 18 years of age, her first lease, her first step into the adult world will be tarred by a ticker reference. You know what I mean? So, but they're going broke. They're trying to balance two households, pay two lots of rents, all because the youngest one has been put on a cashless debit card. How to destroy a whole family. And now the whole lot's facing homelessness because of the housing crisis. But the cause of the younger one in Brisbane's housing crisis is Indu. And sorry, we can't give you a housing allowance. You'll have to work out some other way to get the cash up to pay for your rent. Not good enough. Not good enough. You know, and there's a lot of people that are being hit that have left the Bundaberg region. I came across another lady who she hasn't lived in Bundaberg for a long time. She's in Sydney. All of a sudden, cashless debit card. Because she lived in Bundaberg once. It's getting out of control. And in the last 3 weeks, 1,500 people have been put on the cashless debit card in Bundaberg. That's a lot of people. There's a lot of people going to be having these problems with trying to set up their rents. Okay? And if they don't have a fixed term signed lease, it's going to get far worse. It really is going to get far worse. We already have so many homeless in the region. It is just shocking. And to me, this is just gentrification. Trying to make sure they get the poorest people out of our communities. Where are they going to go? Where are people going to go? Right? I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. We need public housing that's affordable, built. Not in 10 years' time. Now. But this government, the federal government, federal NMP, busy cutting $44 million to the states for housing. Right? Cutting all the emergency funding for the services and the support services and the services for women fleeing domestic violence all around the country. Cutting all the services. All right? That's not the way to assist people that are in a housing crisis for whatever reason. So, yeah, I just wanted to clear that up. Owners are quite within their rights to say, no, I don't want to rent to somebody on an Indu cashless debit card. The same as we've got at least 2 real estate agents doing the same thing in the Hinkler region that I know of. And there are real estate agents in the region that don't accept centre pay. Okay? Because their owners don't want to set it up and do it. And as private owners, they don't have to. They don't have to. There's no law saying that they must. Because it's an impost, it's cost. It's a whole world of bookkeeping and accounting. Well, why bother to duplicate what you're already doing? Most people who own houses and rent them out have the money going through a select account anyway, and at the end of the year, they give it all to their accountant and do their taxes. So the excuse of, oh, they're getting cash rentals, they're not paying taxes, is a load of rubbish. Because most people declare their incomes. You know, especially if it's a supplemental income or something like that. Everybody's got different circumstances. You might be renting out grandma's house. You know what I mean? Or you may have been lucky enough to buy 2 houses while you were, and rent one out to pay yours off, which a lot of people, you know, have done. Whatever the circumstances, all right? Private owners are not obliged to accept centre pay, and they're not obliged to accept people on the cashless debit card, or they're not being discriminatory. You know, they will take people on Centrelink payments as long as they can pay normally. They're direct transfers, right? But it's Indu and Services Australia that are blocking so many people. They're blocking young people from being able to pay their fair shares in third-party rentals, right? And they're blocking people from being able to pay a periodic lease. It's just ludicrous. You know, and if you're in somewhere like Seduna, you can't pay in the caravan park. Can't pay in hotel or motels either, because, you know, pubs have liquor licenses, and if it's on the merchant, you can't pay for accommodation there either. So where are people to go? I don't know. All I know is that we need, the card needs to be stopped, because at the moment you've got 13,000 people on it since March now, and the figures are going up. And, you know, it's getting ridiculous. Holly, yes, of course you can, yep. Yeah, I'll do media for you, Holly, that's not a problem. I'm just reading the comments here. Yeah, I'm just reading the comments here. Pixie, go away. No, the card is not doing the job. Well, it is. It's doing the job for its shareholders and its stakeholders that they wanted it to do. The smoke screen of drugs, gambling, and alcohol was a load of crap to get everybody to turn on people on Social Security. You know, yeah. I don't know what to say. Why periodic lease or why people can't just pay their rents normally, I don't know. So all I know is, you know, to paint the big picture that people on Social Security were wasting their money and they weren't paying their bills. Well, there's a great deal of them now who can't pay their bills that are in debt, and they didn't ask for this, you know, so they didn't ask for this. So anyway, I'm going to leave that here. Yeah, I know the situation of the lady that's going through this. There's a lot more to this story as well, a lot more complications, and unfortunately, unlike a lot of other families who would normally flee domestic violence, she's not in a position to even flee the town that she's in because of court orders regarding the children, mean that she has to stay in the town. She's hugely at risk. This whole situation is abhorrent, and I did speak about it earlier in the week, but I can't give away too many details because I have to maintain people's privacy. I do thank the owner of the property for making sure he put everything in writing for her, and she sent it through to me. As you can see, I removed the names for privacy, which I'm happy to do. I do have the document, you know what I mean? But I'm not releasing people's names due to privacy. But I just wanted to get it out there, all right? This is not an attack on the owner in any way, shape or form. And for people to jump on the back, and the whole purpose of the post is to show that both the card holder and the owner of the property are both impacted by the negative impacts of somebody being forced onto the cashier's debit card. That was the point of me posting that this morning, right? Not for everybody to have a free-for-all over the legalities of it, of which the owner is quite within his rights. Anyway, everybody missed the point except for one comment. The owner's being impacted too. Exactly. That's right. You know, so, yeah, the owner is being impacted. And, yeah, and that's not fair either. So it's both tenant and owner are being screwed around by Indu. Right? Because they don't... Yeah. Why should both lots cop fees and late fees from the banks and stuff like that? Why should anybody be out of pocket or suffer damages or loss from a so-called trial? From a so-called trial. Centrepay is safe, Helen. I've used Centrepay to pay my rents for nearly 20 years. I don't have a problem. It's private owners don't have to take it if they don't want to. There is a setup fee involved, and it's not cheap. And there's a whole thing you've got to go through to set it all up. Owners don't want to do that. They just want their rent paid to their nominated, usually their mortgage account, and then they hand over their taxation at the end of the year. Do you know what I mean? They don't want all the crap. They don't have to. All right? I've been fortunate that in the last, I don't know, most of my life, I've lived in properties that accept Centrepay. I think I've lived in 2 that didn't. You know what I mean? And 1 didn't even have a proper lease, so to speak, you know? Yeah. So, anyway, But most of my adult life, I've just centre paid my rent. But I've lived in some form of housing that was able to do that. And it was easier, and I like it. I don't have to worry about racing down the bank every Thursday fortnight, draw money out, put it into someone else's bank account. When I first came to Queensland, I had to do that. I rented a place and I had a deposit book, and I had to go to my bank, draw the cash out, go to his bank, put it over the counter. You know, so, well, it's not about, Helen says, somebody said that she was nearly evicted because rent not paid. Somebody needs to read the letter again, because she's being forced onto the cashless debit card. Her periodic lease is being withdrawn, which is fully within his rights to do. He doesn't want to renew the lease. He doesn't have to. It's a periodic lease. Give her 30 days notice at any time for no reason. He doesn't even have to give a reason. All right? It's a periodic lease. That's the way it works. You know? But he knows that he will have difficulty because of the previous tenant being on InduCard had the same problems. And this is the bottom line. And once bitten, owners are shy. They're not going to go back for seconds. Right? I've heard it from people in Seduna. I've heard it from people in WA. And I've heard it from people in Hinkler. Right? And wherever Sufi is at the moment, the house that she was renting is now sitting empty. Because he won't rent it to anybody on Centrelink anymore. So that what she describes as a beautiful 3-bedroom Queenslander is now sitting empty on land, going to rack and ruin, because she was on a periodic lease and Indu wouldn't let her pay the rent, so she had to leave. Each state is different, Jade. It's not that simple. In Queensland, it's 30 days. It's 30 days. Right? So every state's tenancy laws are different. You know, whatever it says in your state is for your state, not for everybody, okay? Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I'm not going to keep fighting over this. The owner has done